My ex-husband and his girlfriend laughed at me as our divorce was finalized, then the judge revealed a final surprise that left them in tears. I, 32F, want to share one of the wildest experiences of my life, my divorce. Let me just say, it was more drama than I ever bargained for. I met my ex-husband about 7 years ago. We dated for around 2 years before finally tying the knot. At the time, I was convinced we had something amazing, and I was all in. I've been working in real estate sales for a while, nothing fancy, but decent enough to cover my bills and let me have a few treats now and then. Meanwhile, he worked part-time at a local boutique before we got married, but after the wedding, he pretty much decided to take a long break and find himself. I tried to be supportive because I assumed he'd eventually figure out what he really wanted to do with his life. At first, I didn't see any huge red flags. We moved into a small house that I bought with my own money before the wedding. My mother co-signed the loan just to help me get a better interest rate, but all the monthly payments came straight out of my pocket. My mother and father both liked my ex-husband early on. He'd hang out with my father, chat about clothes or local gossip, and he'd discuss sports with my mother during the big games. He seemed outgoing and friendly. My brother, who's a couple of years younger than me, was a bit more cautious. He told me once that my ex-husband seemed too focused on what he could get out of the relationship. But I shrugged it off because I loved him and thought we'd be a solid team. Months passed, and things started to shift. He began going out late at night, claiming he needed space or was with some friends I'd never even heard of. He'd come back in the early morning hours and act like I was the one being dramatic for asking simple questions. I tried to give him room, thinking maybe he was stressed from not working and feeling stuck at home. But my gut kept telling me something else was going on. My brother also noticed the change in his attitude. He said that whenever my ex-husband visited, he seemed distant, like his mind was somewhere else. One night, my ex-husband came home at 2 a.m. I was waiting up in the living room, worried sick. The second he walked in, he looked surprised that I was awake. I asked him where he'd been, and he got all defensive, yelling about how I was controlling and paranoid. He stormed into our bedroom, slammed the door, and left me sitting alone, feeling confused as hell. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He didn't apologize or explain, he just moved on as if I was supposed to forget about it. Eventually, the suspicion got to me. One day, I saw his phone lying on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower, and I glanced at it. I know some people say never snoop on your partner's phone, but given how things were, I couldn't help it. And there it was. Messages that made it very clear he was talking to some other woman in a way that went way beyond friendship. Let's just say the texts were graphic enough to kill off any lingering doubt I had. My heart sank. When I confronted him, he blew up, flipping the script to make it seem like I was the problem for invading his privacy. But deep down, I knew our relationship was basically done. We had an insane fight that night. He accused me of never supporting his dreams, which was ridiculous because he never even told me what his dreams actually were. He said he felt smothered, even though I basically let him do whatever he wanted. I told him he was betraying me, and he didn't bother denying it. He left the house in a fury. I remember sitting at the dining table, staring at the walls, thinking how quickly everything had gone from bliss to chaos. The next few weeks were tense. He would stay out more often, sometimes not returning until the morning. We barely spoke. My mother noticed I was in a foul mood and invited me over for dinner without him. That night, my father, mother, and brother all rallied around me, saying I deserved better and that I shouldn't let him walk all over me. They told me I might need to prepare for the possibility that our marriage was beyond repair. It hurt, but I knew they were right. A short time later, I discovered he'd actually moved in with this woman he'd been texting. I came home early one afternoon, hoping we could try to have a civil discussion, only to find him packing up some clothes while on the phone with someone, telling them to make space for him in a closet. I could feel my blood boiling, but oddly enough, I also felt a wave of relief, like at least I knew the truth now. I told him to take whatever he wanted and just go. He shot me this look that was a mix of pity and annoyance, and then he left. After that, the official divorce process started. It was a complete nightmare. He quickly hired a lawyer, so I hired one too. We had to follow the usual steps in my state. There was a waiting period plus mediation sessions to see if we could settle. But there was no way I would settle for the kind of bullshit he was demanding. He wanted half of everything, half of my house, half of my savings, even half of my car's value. He was basically trying to bleed me dry. And his new girlfriend was right there with him at mediation, smirking as if they were about to cash a winning lottery ticket. My mother and father were furious. But they reminded me not to do anything rash. My brother was the one who was like, take the gloves off and burn them in court. I felt a mix of both approaches. Part of me wanted revenge, and part of me wanted to handle it with calm logic. My lawyer advised me to keep my emotions in check and just stick to the facts. So that's what I did. I gathered every receipt, every bank statement, every document showing I'd bought the house before the marriage. I made sure I had proof that he never contributed a dime to the mortgage or bills. He basically coasted on my income. The good news was, Under U.S. law, assets you acquire before marriage can stay yours if you don't commingle them. And I had made sure to keep everything separate. My lawyer said we had a strong case. Still, every time we went to mediation, it was torture. He'd act all sweet and vulnerable in front of the mediator, claiming he had no idea what to do now and how he'd given up his career to be with me. Funny how he forgot he quit on his own. Not to mention that he was basically living with another woman. His girlfriend was even cockier, sometimes whispering remarks about how I'd soon be paying for their dream home. The arrogance was insane. Eventually, we reached the final stretch, a day in court where the judge would make the final decisions. Right before that, I got a message from his girlfriend on social media, taunting me that I'd be left with scraps. She even said something like, "I can't believe you're such a sucker, girl. Thanks for setting us up." I screenshotted that and gave it to my lawyer. But I didn't engage her. I just blocked her and moved on. I knew that losing my cool could hurt me in court, so I tried to stay chill. The night before the final hearing, I was a complete wreck. I couldn't sleep, pacing around my living room, thinking about all the possible outcomes. I had nightmares of losing my house and my savings, basically everything I worked for. My mother offered to drive me to the courthouse the next morning, and I took her up on it because it felt good to have support. We got there, and I saw my ex-husband and his girlfriend in a hallway, giggling like they were about to watch a comedy show. My lawyer met me, gave me a firm handshake, and we walked in together. The judge was no nonsense, which I found comforting. My lawyer laid out our evidence, the timeline of my house purchase, the bank statements proving I funded everything before and during the marriage, and the messages where he admitted he didn't chip in. His lawyer tried to spin this sob story of how he sacrificed his ambitions to focus on his home life, but it didn't really line up with reality. Then my lawyer dropped the text that showed he was already with a girlfriend before moving out. The judge asked, after that, the official divorce process started? It was a complete nightmare. He quickly hired a lawyer, so I hired one too. We had to follow the usual steps in my state. There was a waiting period plus mediation sessions to see if we could settle. But there was no way I would settle for the kind of bullshit he was demanding. He wanted half of everything, half of my house, half of my savings, even half of my car's value. He was basically trying to bleed me dry. And his new girlfriend was right there with him at mediation, smirking as if they were about to cash a winning lottery ticket. My mother and father were furious. But they reminded me not to do anything rash. My brother was the one who was like, "Take the gloves off and burn them in court." I felt a mix of both approaches. Part of me wanted revenge, and part of me wanted to handle it with calm logic. My lawyer advised me to keep my emotions in check and just stick to the facts. So that's what I did. I gathered every receipt, every bank statement, every document showing I'd bought the house before the marriage. I made sure I had proof that he never contributed a dime to the mortgage or bills. He basically coasted on my. Then she revealed her ruling. He would not get the 50% or more that he demanded. Instead, he'd receive a minimal settlement to help him get on his feet, plus short-term spousal support that would end quickly, especially given that he was already cohabiting with his girlfriend. The judge basically said he had another form of financial support, so he wasn't entirely helpless. The look on their faces was priceless. My ex-husband's jaw practically hit the floor, and his girlfriend suddenly lost that smug grin. He tried to protest, and his lawyer asked if the judge would reconsider, but the judge was like, "No, this is final." My lawyer gave me this tiny smile, and I felt relief flood my entire body. I could finally breathe. For once, justice went my way. When the session ended, we all stood up. My ex-husband darted over to me, muttering about how I wouldn't get away with this. I just told him the judge made the decision based on the evidence, and he needed to accept it. His girlfriend looked like she wanted to start a fight, but my mother stepped up. The girlfriend called me a loser under her breath, and I just said, "You're the one who lost today. Deal with it." She turned red and stormed off with him. Outside the courtroom, my mother gave me a hug. My father and brother were at home, waiting for the news. My lawyer shook my hand and said this was one of those cases where everything lined up in favor of the person who was actually honest. We left the courthouse, and my mother joked about grabbing a drink. You bet I took her up on it. On the ride back, I called my father and brother, and they were thrilled. My brother was screaming about how awesome it felt to see those two get put in their place. I had so much adrenaline pumping through me like I just won a championship game or something. A few days later, I heard from mutual acquaintances that my ex-husband was livid and convinced the judge was biased. His girlfriend was apparently whining about how unfair the system was, the same system she thought was going to hand them my money on a silver platter. They had even been telling people they planned on investing a huge amount once the divorce was finalized. Talk about counting your chickens before they hatch. Now they were stuck with pretty much nothing. I won't lie, it felt good to see them both face the consequences of their entitlement. They thought they toyed with me and that the court would just hand over everything I'd worked for. But nope, the law actually sided with the facts. People sometimes assume the ex-husband automatically gets a big payday in a divorce, but it doesn't always work that way, especially when he's the one who walked out and contributed next to nothing. In the aftermath, I made it a point to rebuild my life. I hung out with friends more, picked up guitar lessons, something I'd been putting off for ages, and spent more time at the gym. My mother and father started inviting me over more frequently for dinner, which was comforting. My brother kept saying I should go on a vacation to clear my head. Maybe I will someday. For now, I'm just happy to be out of that toxic situation. Looking back, I wish I had seen the red flags sooner. But I guess sometimes you have to learn the hard way. I gave my ex-husband everything I could, but he wanted more. He wanted to control the whole narrative, take my assets, and rub his new relationship in my face. It was like I was dealing with a completely different person from the one I married. But after seeing his meltdown in court and the tears he fought back when the judge announced his bare minimum settlement, I realized I was finally free. The actual settlement I ended up paying was pretty small compared to what he had demanded. The judge gave it an expiration date given how short the marriage was and because he was living with a girlfriend. He got a few months of support, basically the legal system's version of here's something so you can move on. As far as I'm concerned, it was a price I'd pay any day to get rid of that nightmare. I've heard through the grapevine that he and his girlfriend are having money problems now. They probably thought they'd be popping champagne with my hard-earned cash, but that door slammed shut in their faces. Let's just say I don't lose any sleep over it. They made their bed, and now they can lie in it. So yeah, that's how my divorce went from a complete shit show to one of the most satisfying moments of my life. My ex-husband and his girlfriend actually laughed at me in front of the judge, fully convinced they were about to score a windfall. But the judge took one look at the facts and made a final call that left them both speechless. Moral of the story: keep good records, stand up for yourself, and don't let entitled people run you over. Sometimes, life gives you the sweet payoff you deserve, and honestly, watching their faces when they realized they were only getting the bare minimum? That alone was worth everything I went through. All in all, I'm doing all right now. I've got my house, my savings, and a clean slate. Sure, I have a few scars from the experience, but I'd rather have those scars than be trapped in that train wreck of a marriage for another second. My mother still teases me that I dodged a bullet, and my father says he's never been prouder that I stood my ground. My brother cracks jokes about me writing a book someday. Maybe I will. But for now, I just wanted to share this story here, hoping it might help someone else realize that you don't have to roll over for people who think they can take you for a ride. If you're in a similar position, hang in there. Gather your proof. Trust the process. And remember that sometimes, the best revenge is just watching your ex and their new partner realize they're not walking away with the jackpot they thought they had in the bag. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm finally off the ride, and life is a hell of a lot better on solid ground. Make sure to like and subscribe.